Hello and welcome to PGurus channel. I'm your host Sri Iyer. Today I have with me Abhijit Iyer-Mitra. Abhijit, namaskar and welcome to PGurus channel.
மிக்க நன்றி ஐயா.
Mikka Nandri Ungalakum. Abhijit, we are going to talk about the abyss towards which Pakistan's economy is headed. We read a couple of news reports recently, one of people being off-boarded from a plane that was about to take off from Malaysia and the plane being confiscated for non-payment of whatever the dues was. And then I'm also hearing today that President Xi Jinping has stopped taking calls from Imran Khan. So why this sudden new dire straits that Pakistan is heading into? Was it something that everyone expected? What are your thoughts?
Look, nothing's going to happen to Pakistan. First of all, let's be clear about that.
You're the only one who says that.
Yeah, and I'll explain to you why. Pakistan is the clearest example of why the Rayatwari and Zamindari systems didn't work. Because they don't care what happens to the land as long as the land pays them rent. They don't care as long as the tenants pay rent. They don't care if the 10 plagues of Egypt have come onto the land, locusts and the water turning red or whatever. They will squeeze every last drop of money out of the tenants out there. First of all, let us remember this. The people who run Pakistan, the 200,000 odd, about 1,500 to 2,000 families, comprising about, say, 200,000 to 300,000 people maximum who run the entire system, who are intermarried, army, industrialist, landlord all together, they all have dual citizenship of some other country that they can run off to. They will bear no personal consequences for it. Right? So in that sense, Pakistan is almost a condom for its elite. It is. Unfortunately, whether we like it or not, that is exactly what it is. And when you talk about Pakistani foreign policy towards India, it's not the land carrying out the foreign policy, right? Policies are carried out, they're formulated and carried out by people. So it's the same 300,000 people that can engage in reckless sexual behavior and still they will never contract any kind of sexually transmitted diseases, because Pakistan acts as the buffer between them and the consequences of their actions. Number one. Number two, remember, most of the Pakistani economy is an informal economy. It is not a formal economy. It is an economy that has understood through years and years of interacting with the Afghans and the Iranians how black money works, how Hawala networks work, how you can completely stay off grid and so on and so forth. So nothing is going to happen on that score either. Now, let's look at what is specifically happening to Pakistan. Number one, this Malaysia impounding the plane. What happened was the plane landed, and after that, when the boarding was announced, the people didn't realize why they weren't boarded, and it turned out the plane had been impounded by the Malaysian authorities for non-payment of dues. Now, has this led to any political consequences within Pakistan? Nothing. See, things only hurt when you feel consequences. When you don't feel consequences, there is no impetus for change. Is it going to prevent the Pakistani military from carrying out its policies? No. Pakistan has been dire straits before. If anything, they've only intensified their policies as a tool of extortion. Right? So nothing is going to happen on that score either. When it comes to Xi Jinping, I don't believe those reports for a different set of reasons, and I'll tell you why. The equivalent of the Pakistani Prime Minister in China is the Chinese Foreign Minister. Okay, not even the Chinese Prime Minister. Definitely not the president. Imran Khan would have to do a lot of brown nosing to be able to get a call with Xi Jinping ever. Period. Okay, you look even at the chief of army staff when he goes to Beijing. He will have a formal reception by the Chinese head of the PLA, but after that, all his interactions will be the second, third tier. Because they have this very clear thing that for dikhava, for the rest of the world, they will show some kind of equivalence. But in reality, This is where Xi Jinping is, this is where Imran Khan is, and he will always be treated with the vassalage. For example, do you remember in British India, every Cockney colonel, every Cockney major from the working class gutters, probably from the red light areas of London, used to land up in India, and they would suddenly turn into gentlemen and take, tiger hunting shots with the Maharaja of Baroda or the Maharaja of the Nizam of Hyderabad or whatever. उनकी औकात क्या थी? They were literally randi ka bachas from abroad coming here, or
Strong words.
well, they were. In many cases, they actually were. Because understand, the British army in those days was full of people who were so desperate, their lives were so desperate. If you actually read what the life of an army man was in the 1800s and 1700s, it was a horrible life. Most of the sailors in Nelson's navy had to be press ganged. That is where press ganging comes from. You're literally kidnapped by people and forcibly placed into the navy, and yet many volunteered. Can you imagine how horrible your life must have been to volunteer for things like this? But with India, you never needed to be press ganged to volunteer, because they knew automatically that the moment they became an officer, or if you're just white, it was like 10-15 times you climbed the social ladder in India. Back in Britain, you will always be treated like that product of a red light area. But in India, you would be treated like, Arey, Gora Sahib hai. Everybody will fawn over you. They'll all give you respect and so on and so forth. So this is a very, very different this thing. So what happens with Pakistan and the Chinese is the equivalent of Imran Khan, the one Imran Khan would most likely interact with on a minute to minute, not even minute to minute. Even there are limitations, right? They don't have times for his temper tantrums and not temper tantrums, his cocaine addled. I don't know if they're tantrums or pata nahi kya hai, whatever happens when he does cocaine.
Vocal
Uh,
eruptions.
Not even eruptions, apparently. He has fits of melancholy and crying bouts and God knows what else. But anyway, what happens is, even with the Chinese foreign minister, why is the Chinese foreign minister chosen as the conduit? Because the foreign ministry is a joke in China. Nobody in China takes their own foreign ministry seriously. They're just people who are hired to lie for their country. Okay? They're completely powerless, and they're just figureheads. So that is who the interaction takes place between. So Xi Jinping won't have stopped. It's if you remember, I've been telling you this for almost the last 5 years now, that I have been noticing ever since about 2015-16. I have been reading in Chinese journals, internal Chinese language journals, which are conveniently translated and given to me. I don't speak, I swear beautifully in Mandarin, and that's the extent of my Mandarin. Uh, 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 of the sheer level of frustration setting in China about Pakistan. They believe Pakistan, quite rightly by the way, they believe Pakistan is trying to sink CPEC after having taken so much money off them. And this is quite true, because when you talk to the Pakistani elite, they tell you, we don't want CPEC coming in. These people are not going to, we can't play them like the Americans. They're going to extract their pound of flesh. We don't want this crap. So that isn't a new equation out there. Jiang Zemin wouldn't have taken calls of Nawaz Sharif or Benazir Bhutto. Deng Xiaoping wouldn't have taken calls of Ziaul Haq and things like that either. There's nothing particularly new about it. It's a natural progression of things. And even if Pakistan goes bankrupt as we understand it in the modern fiscal sense, what is the worst you think that can happen, Shri? Because other countries have also gone bankrupt. So, for example, Venezuela has gone bankrupt. And other than immigrants, a stream of immigrants going outside, what have you actually seen happen in terms of its international assets or anything like that? Nothing. Argentina, if you remember, under Christina Kirchner, I think it was, also went bankrupt because her son was like Rahul Gandhi. He was one of these socialist Euro social democrat type things. They went bankrupt. Did you see anything realistically happen to Argentina? Once upon a time, if you went bankrupt and you couldn't pay your loans, the lender country would annex you. That is what Britain and France used to do once upon a time. Today, that simply doesn't happen. So, I have a lot more faith in Pakistan's ability to continue than most Indians do.
Well, two questions on that. One is the CPEC road itself. As far as I know, the Chinese have done the hard yards in that they have stretched it all the way into Gilgit. Right now, it's only plains. So where do things stand now? The highway itself.
So that is the difficult part, because the plains is what is fertile. The the Pakistanis don't mind if you build roads where nothing can grow. But the feudal power stems from control of the land. And the feudal lords don't want things coming up on their land. First of all, they don't want to give up such large chunks of land. Second, when they do, they want royalties on everything that passes through. Right. Third, the same landowners who are resisting the purchase are also part of the government. Remember that. And they will be
Right.
part of every government. The same people were part of Benazir Bhutto's government. The same people were part of Nawaz Sharif's government. The same people were part of Musharraf's government. The same people are part of Imran Khan's government. Nothing has changed. Sabke sab chor hain. This is honor amongst thieves in that sense. And because they have genuine strategic concerns that they have been sort of bamboozled into a debt trap, they are trying their level best to see to it that the projects do not fructify at all, so the debt doesn't kick in. They're already in deep crap. They think they can kind of talk it back. Unfortunately, the deals have been signed, and if anything goes into a sort of debt forgiveness mode, the Chinese never forgive debts, number one. Number two, if it does, the Pakistanis will be blamed for not acquiring, not contributing their share, because they were meant to look after the acquisition of land and security and things like that. So it basically stands at the point where you have infrastructure in Gwadar, but it's still not properly entered Punjab even. And it hasn't grown north from Gwadar either.
I
So
see.
the
I see.
entire plains stretch of Pakistan remains unconnected. You have things up to occupied Kashmir maximum, and on the coast, and nothing between the coast and this thing. You can kind of circumvent it, as in you have to go past the Chinese road into a few kacha roads, and then you can connect up to the north-south arterial from Islamabad to Karachi, and then move out. But that wasn't the intent of CPEC. CPEC was meant to be an integrated China-focused corridor, almost like a white gymkhana club. Indians and dogs not allowed ki tarah. Pakistani is not allowed on that road. It was, I mean, limited. It won't be so blatant. But it was always meant to be about China bypassing the Indian blockade of the Straits of Malacca. Not very well thought out, but still.
Thank you very much for that update. Maybe when we say that nobody in China is picking up Imran Khan's phone calls, maybe even the foreign minister is not picking up the phone calls of Imran. We don't know. And like you said, an informal economy will find ways to survive, and but it's going to kind of lurch and lurch and lurch and lurch. So we'll have to see how things play out. Thank you very much, Abhijit. We'll be back again with interesting conversations such as this one. Namaskar, and do subscribe to PGurus channel.